Aloha and welcome to this WOD. It's the third of our WODs on um, uh, dynamic web apps. We're going to talk about validation for this WOD, and important topic because it really adds to the usability of applications when you can do decent validation. I am assuming that you've already watched this Introduction to Platform Validation. If not, you should stop and go ahead and do that before you watch this, because I'm going to assume that you've seen it, and any of the other stuff in the resources section. So the first thing we need to do is create a new branch off of the successfully completed branch from the second WOD. So let's go here, go to branches, and I was using branch 2.2, so I'm going to press plus to make attempt 2-2-2 because I've already done one attempt. That was the way I generated the screencast. So I'm going to create this branch, and if we look over here, we're now in 2.2, and then I'm going to do clean, compile, run to put us back where we want to be. And if I go to the digits and do, just bring up this page. Okay, we can see that we're back without any form of validation, which is where we want to be because we're going to be adding that. Okay, so let's look at the specification. I think we're ready. So let's start the timer. So finish, start. Okay, so we're going to provide validation for the digits form. Specifically, all of the three fields should not be empty, and the telephone field should be 12 characters long. Follow the 3 steps described in the above screencast, which was to implement the validate method, implement validation in the view, and check for, and then in the controller, be actually looking for validation problems and doing the following. Okay, so let's start with implementing the validate method in views.formdata.contact formdata. So that's here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to say public list of validation error, validate, and then here, and then we want to import list, and then we need to import validation, and that's from the played data.validation. And now we have this error indicating that we're not returning a the list of validation errors. So what we're going to do next is say list of validation errors equals new array list, like that. And then actually at the bottom we'll just say return. Well, we want to return null. Wait, let's put this here, right here. Let's actually go here and fix this check style because that will be helpful. So validates the form input by the user. All fields must be non-empty. Telephone field must contain 12 characters. And then return null if no errors. List of validation errors if errors. Okay. So what we want to say is we want to say return, and we want to say if errors dot is empty, we're going to return null. Otherwise, we're going to return errors. And that's our expression. Actually, I think we can probably, I don't even think we need the, yeah, we can just do it that way. And array list is probably needing to be imported. Okay, so let's figure out how we're actually, we've got this thing of errors, so let's figure out a code. We want to make sure they're all non-empty. So what we can say is if first name equals null, or first name dot length is equal to 0, then what we're going to do is we are going to say errors.add new validation error, and we're going to pass the field name, and we're going to pass a string saying what we should be saying, what we want to be saying if in fact there is a problem. I'm noticing that I've got a check style error there, which I think is that. Yes. Okay. So that's for our first name, and then actually this is pretty much exactly what we want for we want something very much like that for all three fields. So let's do this, cut and paste, and we'll say last name or last name or last name. Kind of redundant, but that's partially because of the contrived nature of this example. And then telephone, length equals 0, and then telephone is required. Okay, and then the final thing we wanted to say was that if in fact telephone not equals null, and telephone, well, it's not going to be null, actually, because we are initializing these. I guess the user could maybe. But if telephone length not equals 12, then we're going to add a validation error that the telephone must be xxx-xxx-xxxx. Save that out. And then we get this magic number. 12 is a magic number. Okay, and so you might think that just saying int, telephone length equals 12 would be enough to fix it. But no, you would be wrong. Okay, that's still magic. Okay, it turns out the way to make non-magic numbers, according to check style, is we have to say a private static final int num tel if phone cares equals 12, and then if down here, get rid of this thing, if we say that this is num telephone cares, okay, then we're all good. We just got rid of that that error. I should put this back so we can see things. Okay, so there's our validation method. Okay, and let's go back here. So we've checked to make sure that all fields are not have telephone's characters, 12 characters. That looks pretty good for that. Now we have to implement validation in the view, and so for each control we have to add the has error, CSS class if errors were found, and add a help block that will display any validation errors associated with the field. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we go here, and what we need to do now, for each form group, we're going to add the following. We have to say @if contact form And in this case, it's going to be first name dot has errors. Okay. Then what we can say is has error. Okay, so that's basically the, and unfortunately, if you look carefully, you'll find that Eclipse doesn't quite get the syntax coloring correct because there's too many, there's these nested double quotes. It doesn't figure that out. But basically, we've got the form group. Then we're going to have this if statement where this is the Boolean expression, okay, if our field has errors, and then this is the then clause, has error right here, okay? And once we've done that for this field, we might as well just copy and put it here, and also put it here, and then put last name and last name. And now I'm going to say to you at this point, if you're an observant software developer, you're going, my goodness, look how much boilerplate exists in this HTML here. That's like, this is pretty much all of these three things here. This div right here is identical to this div, which is identical to this div. The only difference being, you know, first name, last name, and, just to correct myself, telephone number. That's just crazy. There must be a better way. If there's no better way, then play sucks. Okay, that would be my answer to that. Turns out play doesn't suck, at least, you know, with respect to this particular issue, because there is actually quite a nice way to fix this problem, and it's basically by defining your own Scala template, okay, to expand this. And I'm not going to show you it yet, okay? We're going to just keep kind of stumbling, trudging along, I'd say, building up more and more of this repeated code at this kind of, you know, low level, just so that you kind of get comfortable with things. And once you're really comfortable with things, plus you're really exasperated with all of this redundant code, then I'll show you how to do it, and you'll have this, it'll blow your mind because you'll realize you've been doing it all along. It's like, you know, it's like in The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy realizes that she just had to tap her ruby slippers. She had them with her all the time. It's going to be that kind of epiphany when you realize how to get rid of all this redundant code and abstract away, you know, make it more dry. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait to do it. But for right now, I'm not going to do it. Maybe some of you, maybe the light bulb has already gone off in your head. You go, oh, I get it already. I get what I understand what he's. I've just hinted at it. Some of you might have gotten the hint right there. Others maybe not so soon, but you'll all get it eventually. Okay. Anyway, let's keep going. So the first thing, what do we have to do? We had to add the has error CS class if errors were found. Okay, I think we got that good. Okay, and then the second thing we have to do is add a help block. Okay, so what we want to do is go below this input right there, and then we're going to say span class equals help block. Okay, because that's what we want in there. Okay, but then what do we do? What we have in there? This is where we have that crazy Scala code, okay, that is hard to understand, but you don't really have to understand it. You just have to believe, okay, that what this is going to do is produce the errors for that particular field, if there are any, and print them out. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to cut and paste, whoops, didn't line up very well, here, and then we're going to cut and paste here, make it line up, and then we know that this is last name, and we know this is telephone, and you know, it's getting worse and worse with all this repeated text, right? You know, it's really getting crazy bad. You know, sometime next, I don't know, next week or two, we're gonna figure out how to fix that problem. Okay, so don't freak too much at this point. Okay, so there, I think we finished validation in the view. And then the third part is validation in the controller. So we've got to go to application. And this is where we are going to look at our post contact and we're going to do the bind from request. And remember I said in the screencast that it's when you invoke bind from request if there is a validation method associated with the class that implements the form, okay, it's going to invoke that, all right? And it's going to want that method to either return null if everything was copacetic or a list of validation errors if things were not copacetic. Okay, and so that's what that's doing. And so now the way we deal with it is if we just say, okay, if form data dot has errors, okay, what we're going to do is, why not? Let's just say system out print line. We won't, you know, this is just debugging so you can see that you can inject these these print line statements and see what's going on. And then what we're going to do, but what more importantly, what we have to do is we have to return from this method, and we're going to return a bad request with that form, okay, that we just retrieved. But because of the calling of the bind from request, that form data now is annotated with all of our information about the errors, okay, that we created those validation errors. That's now in that form data. So when we go and render this new form data, things are going to show up in red, and there's going to be the help text and so forth that we kind of injected into this object as a result of doing bind from request. Okay, so that's the good news. And then we can say else. And then we just do basically exactly what we were doing before. As I noted in the screencast, you cannot call this method if there are errors. Okay, you'll get a runtime error if you do that. So you got to make sure that you do the bind from request. That's going to invoke validation. Then you check to see if there are errors. Do whatever error processing you want. Okay. And then if there aren't any errors, now you go ahead and you do your get to get the object that you want and go ahead and do whatever you want to do. In this case, we'll just say, OK. And then we'll print out the name. Something like that. OK, so speaking of OK. All right, so there is our application. So we've done our three things. So the question is, will it compile? Hard to say. Compiles. Okay, sorry about that. I really should make more errors. But let's try to do an add. Okay, so now we're basically going into clicking the add button with the various kinds of validation problems. So if we do it with nothing, if we put my name in here, that works. Gets rid of that error. That gets rid of that error. And then if we just do that, we see, oops, not the right thing, so we'll add an 808. Okay, so we've got we've done our validation really pretty swiftly here. To end the WOD, commit the working code to your branch. So we'll go to changes, and we see that we've just modified 3 files: the application, which is the controller, new contact, which is the view, and our backing class where we added our validation method. Okay, so that looks just perfect. So we're going to say added validation, and to our branch 222, commit and sync, and we're all good. So we're going to give that one 18 minutes, so it went a little faster than before, and I hope you enjoyed it.